Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Wait a While podcast. And joining AJ and me today, we have Ed from University Drive. So first of all, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So I wanted to quickly, get your impressions. Something AJ and I talked about with John Popko on a recent one of these, because both of them were involved. AJ very heavily was the Come Together benefit show at the arena. And just almost from a selfish standpoint, I wasn't there, so I'm trying to kind of picture it. But so, your band played probably the first show you played in a while.
Yeah.
Actual people there, actual sound system, stage and everything. What was that experience like for you guys?
It was amazing to just get to play again because it's been so long, and I don't know, to get to play on a stage like that was really cool too. I mean, it'd been, even with the tour that we were on recently, like it still wasn't, that was still a big stage to play on, and it was actually really cool. It sounds really cheesy, but it was really cool. We just had a really cool spot for the set list that we played, and it just like got the perfect amount dark, when we played. So it was just like it was a beautiful night. And I don't know if we played particularly the best because we hadn't played in forever, but it was just super gratifying to get to do something like that, and especially to see everybody. I think that even almost bigger than playing actually performing. I love to perform, everybody does, but to actually be able to see my brother Dan Rosler from Estacota and Jay and all them guys and all, just to be able to see everybody, that for me was I was like, oh, so fucking happy to see some people I know and love.
Well, I was in the crowd during their set, and it sounded awesome. I mean, it not only did it sound awesome, it looked amazing, and yeah, chiming on that, it was great to see so many great people. And, so many people we're used to seeing, at least every 6-8 weeks, maybe, or so. But yeah, that their set was
sometimes less.
Awesome. Yeah, exactly.
What about the, it's a big open space as opposed to like a club or something like that. There's not people in your face. So was it harder to connect with the audience, as far as the, the energy of I don't want to say the room because it wasn't a room, but what was that aspect of it like?
It was, there was a bit of hesitation in my mind, when we were walking up and just how's this going to work? Is this barrier going to feel strange, And I think maybe, I don't know, 30 seconds, a minute into us playing the first tune, I was like, okay, I don't know. I have no idea if they're digging anything we're doing, but it looks like everybody's having a nice time. But I think right after the first song, because it kind of ends crazy with all of us screaming and stuff, and we just got a really positive reaction. And it just did, after that, it really didn't feel much different than playing at Carl Hall or playing, a bigger, wherever, it just felt like playing a show and people who were really the one thing I could say, I think just because there hasn't been, but there's no shows anywhere, it seemed like everyone in attendance was actually just so grateful to see and experience live music. And I think you could feel that, so maybe that split the difference of not having necessarily that intimate up close kind of thing, but you could tell everybody was just amped. I mean, even for every other band too, everybody was just thrilled, fuck yeah, there's live music again.
Yeah, definitely. That's couldn't be put better, And I think the other cool thing, and then you've also been hearing it too from other acts that have done it, and I have had a couple friends that have done it, on the same scale and other scales, and I think the cool thing is some that were in the distance, instead of clapping, they were beeping their horn.
Yeah.
So that was really cool.
Yeah.
The clap got replaced with the horn.
Yeah, it was neat.
I thought,
definitely interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you know, come weird times, come change. And it was just, it was neat. It was neat to see cars and then people sitting next to their cars. But like Ed said, everyone, God, I didn't hear one negative mutter whatsoever. People were just so thrilled.
Yeah.
So pumped to be seeing live music, no matter what rules they had to follow, you know.
Do you, Ed, do you guys have anything else scheduled coming up, whether it's live stream stuff or any kind of something similar to what we've been talking about here?
I'm doing something tomorrow. I'm doing an acoustic performance I think at Carl Hall. I'm doing it. Yeah, for Feet First Productions. They got in touch and asked about doing an acoustic performance, so I'm going to go down there tomorrow. We're going to do that. Outside of that, I mean, everything's just up in the air at the moment, but mostly what I've been focusing on is just demos and writing and home recording and we have plans to go in and make a record, start making a record in September. So I'm just trying to stay ahead of everything and make sure I have some decent songs.
I mean, that seems like one of the positives to come out of this is people have been hunkering down, and, you know, monetarily it's better to be on the road for almost any musician at any level. But there's been material coming out of this from the level of, you know, Taylor Swift did a quarantine album. I mean, that's on a level that's just, you know, ridiculous, but she did it.
Yeah.
And, you know, so I guess that's one thing. Have you been like also checking out new music, or when you're trying to write? I know when some people are in writing mode, they don't want to hear anything else because they don't want it to influence them.
I'm kind of personally all over the place, and I mean, I think like any other avid music listener, I get locked in these patterns where I'll just listen to like two bands or two artists that I really love over and over again for 3 weeks at a time, like just one album, and like obsess over everything and then just be done with it for 3 months, you know. But my wife is getting me into the band Warpaint, which I always heard of them, but I never really listened to them. So I've been listening to that record a lot. Danny from Rosary Guild got me into Failure, and my mind is like blown the fuck away by Failure. So
she's like a DJ, man. The first time I ever met her, I was bartending a shift at City Market in Wilkes-Barre, and she came in and with a couple people that I knew, and she just started putting money in the jukebox, and like it went from like Smashing Pumpkins to Merle Haggard to the Misfits to Elliott Smith. Like she was just jumping all over the place, and I looked at her, I'm like, you're the best DJ ever. Like, who are you? And then, because I hadn't met her yet, and then, you know, and then boom, I find out she's in Rosary Guild, and then it's history. But she has one of the greatest tastes of music I've ever. It's just so broad, but it's all the best shit.
Yeah, and I'm kind of similar in that. I mean, I don't know if it's all the best stuff that I listen to, but I'm definitely like, you know, I listen to everything from Hank Williams to Run DMC, everything in between there, you know. So like, I just love all music, but I have no, like what you were saying before, Mike, was I don't really get worried about influences. Like I just want to listen, and I think subconsciously and even sometimes consciously I try to like pick up little tricks, if that makes any sense, in the songwriting or melody writing or lyric writing or whatever, and try to see how I could apply it without just, you know, stealing a song for lack of a better term.
I think the way I look at it, and again, I'm not a musician, so I look at it differently, but I figure once you come to terms with the fact that you're never, it's like too late to come up with anything that really hasn't been done before.
Sure.
But once you realize that, you kind of have the freedom to just do whatever you want. And you know, maybe if you record something and say, okay, that sounds 100% like this other song, we're not going to use it. But, you know, the Beatles were derivative. So if they could do it, you know what I mean? Like if it wasn't for Chuck Berry, and then you could go back to probably caveman times, you know? So like, you know, everything's coming from somewhere.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And I think like, I think a big part of, you know, becoming, or getting away from that and indulging in your influences is almost kind of like time on your board too, you know, like time just doing it because you just develop your voice,
right?
No matter what it is, if it's writing or art, visual art or music, you just find it took me 15 years, but I think I'm starting to kind of find who I am as a songwriter, as pretentious as that sounds. And I think it makes it easier to not really worry about, you know, like you said, being derivative, things being derivative of other things, you know?
Well, first of all, that's not pretentious at all, man. You're a songwriter. You're not pretending to be anything. You are a songwriter. You're not pretending to be, but I'm not saying that in a negative, but I think too, you know, the same thing with like, just comparing it to like being a chef. You know, there's chefs early on, it's like, oh, I was classically trained French. And then, you know, then there's this guy from Italy, and then the sushi chef from Japan. Now what you're seeing, and it's just the evolution of everything, is chefs they don't eat their own food. They go and they eat everything from Domino's to whatever the opposite of their culinary skill is, because they want to move forward, push things forward. And I mean, that's like Mike said, everybody comes from someone. I mean, Eddie, I know, you know, you're a huge Nirvana fan.
Sure.
You're a huge Foo Fighters and Queens of the Stone Age fan. And you can hear some of that influence in your music.
For sure.
Yet, it's not, you're not completely biting it at all.
Right.
Those are just part of the ingredients that you like to cook with.
Absolutely. They're the spices I choose.
It's the same. I mean, it's the same with, I think, anything. It's the same with writing. I mean, when you're starting out with anything, you kind of have to have a template. And we're lucky enough that we have these masters we could look up to, you know, or you could even look at something that's garbage and learn to not do it that way. But, you know, even like, you know, I think I remember I was on this kick when I was young and cared more about things, but I was on this like Hemingway kick. So I was like, I'm going to try to write like a couple paragraphs like Hemingway, you know, and they were horrible. But just to like, I'm like, well, that guy, you know, made something of himself. People still read his stuff years later. I'm going to try to do that. You could do like these little exercises. It's probably like, I'm going to play my guitar like, you know, Jimmy Page, you know, for like a week, and then maybe never do it again. But like, and you also, another thing too, and when I'm talking to people like regarding writing, is you kind of have to learn the rules before you break them. So like AJ talking about the classical chef, I mean, you know, almost every chef, no matter what they're doing, they're trained in like the French side of things, you know, but that doesn't mean they're going to be a French chef. So it's like learning classical. If you learn classical guitar, you're going to be able to use that if you're in Slayer or if you're playing with Ryan Adams or like playing at the corner bar. But if you just go out there and say, I'm going to be 100% original now, I mean, maybe if you have that, but most of us aren't born with the natural ability to just be 100% right out of the box.
Sometimes that every now and then, you know, someone comes along that it's just that, and then you ask them like, did you practice? Did you study? Did you have? And they say no. And
you know, that's once in a lifetime.
Exactly. Yeah. But then
you're not going to be that, probably, you know.
No. And then there's guys that are pretentious about just that. And you could fucking see that a mile away. You know, just, I think that's like in certain styles of music, you know, like, you know, like in the punk thing and in that world and in the days of Metro, like it wasn't cool to be good.
Yeah.
You know, but then the people that were really good stuck out, obviously, because it was really awesome.
It's almost like the lo-fi thing where it's like, oh, if this sounds too good, it sounds too produced and it sounds fake.
Right.
But like even like Dr. Dog is still one of my favorite bands, and I really can't. Some of the early stuff I just don't care for because it sounds like it was recorded under like wet toilet paper.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
When you're going out of your way to try to sound like you don't care. It's I don't know, but again, with the caveat that I'm not a musician, I don't really know what I'm talking about. I'm speaking as a listener.
I think that's a really good point though, because I mean that's like it comes to like the hipster class, and like the whole idea of that, and the whole idea of, I don't know, I hate the idea of like kings of cool, like gatekeepers of cool, and like you have to aspire to that one lane of cool, and there's no other lanes of cool. And I think that's everywhere in the world of music. Like that's just gonna be everywhere. But like even talking about like Metro days, I think of like almost like playing rock music, alt rock music. Like that's my, that's what I love. But playing alt rock music I remember there were a couple of years there where it was just like, it didn't matter how good of a band they were. It was just like, oh, this is just like, it's so, like you got that kind of attitude. But everyone's going to think what they want to think. And like you said, I think it just matters. I think the people who keep doing it, the people who stick around, and if they're doing it for the right reasons, like just because they love to do it, it's like anything else. If you love to do it and you're doing it just because you love to do it without any, expectations, then I think that comes through those people, if that makes any sense.
And when you look at
1,000,000%. 1,000,000%. I mean, that's it. That's it in its purest form. You're not messing with it in a laboratory. You're not. It's what the term organic means. It's 100%.
And like you said, you could see it from a mile away when it's not that. When somebody when something is one thing one day and then the next, all of a sudden, wait, they're a country artist now? Oh, that's interesting. Why are they a country artist? And it's like, even with this latest Taylor Swift album, it's like, I've listened to it like twice, and it's hard to wrap your head around, because like, here's someone that's very conscious of her public. She's brilliant with social media, interviews, photo shoots, all that stuff. So I don't know, like, okay, so she worked with the guy from the National and Bon Iver and Jack Antonoff, and it's like, well, it's just hard to figure out, is that authentic or not, right? And she'll be fine whether or not, like if I decide next week it's not authentic, I think she'll be fine. Like it's not going to go down. But like, it's like, if you decide you want to work with Bon Iver, Jack Antonoff, you're going to have to like really convince him, and no matter how good your stuff is, and, if she wants to work with anyone, it's just going to happen. Right, and then those people are going to give interviews saying how much they love her stuff, how much they love her work, and she's this great artist and this great writer, because they have to say that. So it's like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm going off tangent here, but it's like, if somebody came out of nowhere and worked with those three people and made that same album, I wouldn't be thinking that. But it's like, I'm just going to be a little bit cynical about it. If Kanye comes out and he's doing a duet with, McCartney, I actually think he did that, or Clapton or someone, and they're both on TV, like blowing each other, saying, oh, we love it. This guy, he's the new Mozart of our generation, whatever. And it's like, it's kind of, to me, it's like, well, if my bank account just got a new zero at the end of it, I would say that about anyone.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So I don't know. I'd say like Nickelback's the greatest band of all time. Imagine Dragons, don't matter.
That's,
you
absolutely.
can pay any producer to come in and write with you or whatever. But anyway, she'll be fine anyway. I mean, it doesn't matter what I think. Something I wrote down just before I don't forget. When we started off, you mentioned the tour, and you went out. University Drive went out with Cold, which is a kind of a, I guess alt rock is what you're saying, which is a big umbrella. But how did that like come about? Like how did you guys? What happened?
Well, it's kind of crazy how it happened, because I wasn't really telling it. Let's start back a little bit, but I went through this awful thing. Mother passed away. It was really fucking awful to go through. Still awful to go through. Anybody goes through loss, it's awful, right? So I started writing after that, and I had this whole thematic record. And in my head, I wasn't really saying it to anybody, but in my head, I was like, this is probably gonna be the last serious undertaking that I take, like this is the last, like I will always make records, always make EPs, but this is the last like thing that I put a lot of like heavy thought and time into. So, I just kind of wanted it to be this different, expansive thing. And we put the record out, and people were so kind and receptive to the record. And I thought that was pretty much it. And it was like, I can't remember if it was a month after we put it out or a couple of weeks after, but Nick Coyle got in touch with me and was just like, hey, do you have any interest in going on the road with Cold? And I was like, what do you mean? Like, that just seemed insane to me. But absolutely. And what I'd come to find happened, or what I found out happened, was apparently, this is so silly, but apparently because on Instagram, the University Drive page like follows Nick Coyle, and Nick Coyle follows that, follows the University Drive Instagram. And because of that, Scooter follows Nick, but somehow our algorithm, like the way our shit just was popping up, and we were kind of blowing up everywhere with the record, like just blowing up all the marketing and social media and everything. So he kept seeing these things of us performing and, little clips of the record. And I guess he really dug what he heard, and then he downloaded the record and listened to it and like connected to it on a pretty deep level. And that's how we got asked to go out, which is so fucking weird and insane. I still don't really comprehend it. And it's crazy. It was one of the best times of my life.
That's again, so just pure.
Yeah, it's nuts.
That's just it. Yeah. There was no, nothing other than just someone connecting to the music. One thing, it's funny that Mike shifted to this. We often do this. He reads my mind. My next question was going to be, how, a tour like this, first time that you were on, a long string. How many dates did you do? Over a dozen, right?
We did 22 or 23 dates, but it was like we did, we went out for 1 week, then we came back because we had to work and stuff. And then we went out for another week, and I can't remember exactly, but that's kind of how we did it until the last 2 dates in LA that we flew out to do.
So, obviously to date, biggest tour you've ever played, sure. in other bands that you've been in, Weekend Warrior stuff, right? Probably a couple of runs here or there, stuff like that. You weren't, you were a friend of the road still, but that being said, like this, how, what was something that, kind of was eye-opening, or maybe just something that differed from that just pure independent side of it? Now this, obviously, you were, support for a band that was going to bring the majority of the people.
Right. Absolutely.
So, what most people don't know is when they go on tour as an independent band, and you're booking your own tour, you're asked of a booking agent, or you're asked of a talent buyer or the booker of the club, what is your draw in this market, or those sort of things. A lot of people, wonder this or that. And oftentimes, I'm just trying to give people insight here that may be watching this. Oftentimes, a band like University Drive would team up with a band out of Philadelphia, and then that band in Philadelphia has a friend in DC. So then you would play Wilkes-Barre or Scranton, or both, and then play Philly with that band, and then play DC with the other friend's band. And that's how it materialized. This, quite different than that.
Oh, for sure.
You guys had these dates, the pressure to, bring people wasn't there. You were welcomed with open arms, which is huge. You didn't have to buy on. something that other people also don't know about. We could talk about that later.
Yeah. Yeah.
But how was that experience? And like I said, were there any eye-opening things? Obviously there was a lot of positive to it. Was there any, cons to it?
So the most there were no cons to any of it. It was all like everything that, when I talked to Scooter the first time I talked to him about it, everything he said it was going to be, it was that and more. And I think a big part of us being so like blown away and happy with how everything turned out in the beginning is just like every day, every drive that we would take, I would literally just tell everyone, man, I go, this is never going to happen again. Or this is never going to happen again. Like, there's no way this will ever happen again. So like, we all got to stay grateful and humble. And like, this will never happen again. So, I think just all the four of us, or the five of us when Scott would be with us, I think we just had a good attitude about it, because we knew like, we just weren't expecting anything. So that was the first part of it. And the big learning experience was, when I played in a social state, which I was in for almost like 8 years, we did tons of road gigs. And I mean, we'd go on 11-day tours and take my fucking Santa Fe, like, and live in it basically for 11 days. Insanity. And with Firewood Friends, I went on the road with those guys too. Like, I love that. I love the DIY approach. We're going to plan dates like that once we can, again, but, the big difference, honestly, was setting up. That was the big difference. When every band comes to your venue or any venue, like, they expect what? They expect like a at least a line check, probably a sound check. And, they take their time, make sure, okay, we're all dialed in. We got everything. Are you ready at the back there, Joey? How about you, Jimmy? Are you ready? Like everyone, okay, we're ready to start. Where on that tour, doing the DIY route, you're not talking big like money, you're talking like independent bands just getting together and trying to reel people in. Where on that, there's money behind it, and it's like the goal of this show is it's to, make Cold look good and to fucking kick ass for Cold. Like, that's what it was all about, So the big thing with us was some nights we would get a line check. Some nights we didn't. Some nights when we got a sound check, we were fucking through the roof about it, So the biggest thing that we learned was like setting up and tearing down like super fast, super fast. And I think that's something that we even took to the show we played the other night, or the other night, down at the arena, because we're just quick now. We don't really care. Like if it sounds good, if they make us sound good, that's great. We get up there, we do our job, try to stay professional, and get out of there. So that's the biggest learning experience. Everything else, though, like, honestly, guys, it was just incredible. It was super incredible. I'm so grateful for it, and hopefully we're going to do it again once all this stuff calms down. So
that's great to hear. I mean, that's awesome. And you I hope that it happens again for you, man, because you did it once. So what's to say it shouldn't happen again? And I do know you had a little bit different of something booked. You yourself and I just forgot his name. You guys were supposed to go out acoustic with Cold again, right?
Oh yeah, me and Angelo.
That's right. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, it's cool. I don't know that's the plan, but now that there's more time spent away because of COVID and all the lockdowns and restrictions in place, I have a feeling that this tour is going to go from being, like this, it was supposed to be this intimate, broken down kind of thing. And I think now I have a feeling it's going to turn into like a more blown out kind of rock and roll tour. And it might line up well with, the plans we have. So we might be able to do it full band. I mean, it's all wait and see at the moment, but hopefully we get to go back out for sure.
AJ, you mentioned the buy-in. I didn't want us to lose that little thing. So just define that for people.
So basically, what happens from an independent standpoint, small situation, all the way up to opening for U2 because I heard it happened a couple years back on a U2 tour. I don't know exactly, so don't quote me, but it was like some rich billionaire or billionaire's kid or something, you know, got 5 dates on a U2 tour. And so basically you pay to play. It started happening in LA back in the day, the Whiskey A Go-Go and all those clubs. And then that was adopted a little bit, started happening in New York City, you know, so 80s, 90s. And then it was mainstay in New York City. Very first time I ever played a real New York City club, Kenny's Castaways, you know, we had to guarantee so many people backing $200. So our draw had to be worth $200 and it was $10 to get in. So, you know, we had to bring that many people. Years later, you know, in the early 2000s, playing Arlene's Grocery, you know, awesome small rock club. But
great place.
First time Underground Saints played there, we had to put a deposit down, even with agent helping us get the date. And then we turned around and drew, and they handed us our money back and handed us more money. They, you know, so because these are places like my place, where they have a bar ring too, but so they use that a little bit as you know, to generate more income other than the bar. But you know, I've never asked anybody to pay, and I never will ask anybody to pay. But what people don't understand about Carl Hall is we don't have a bar ring, and we have a sound engineer, and we have a ticket taker, and we have insurance, and we have rent, and all these other things. So there is a baseline that I try to base that off of, that I am loose with, especially when bands do their jobs and they're just trying to, you know, and sometimes sometimes I'm not charging what I have to charge. A lot of people don't know that. I don't really say that out loud. I should charge more, but because I've been on the other side of it. And when a band plays a great show and they bring 25 people, but then the other 3 bands brought 2 people each, you want to bang your head against the fucking wall. Because it's like, man, there's 4 bands on this bill. What the fuck? This band did their job. They did their shit. These other bands, you know, this and that. It's like, you got to do that, or you shouldn't even come out and play. That being said, some people with money, they'll just pay and say, okay, we want to play this said venue, CBGB's. Towards the end, I played there a couple of times, twice, but we never had to pay. But they would do that. But like I said, Whiskey A Go-Go still to this day. LA is huge on it. You got to pay to play. Certain rooms, they'll take a deposit too. It's not, they'll give it back to you if you prove it. Other rooms, no, they're not giving it back to you or anything like that. But, you know, tours, Andrew McMahon, you know, those guys talk about it. Certain people buying on to tours, like the agent will get them a tour that maybe, you know, they're on a card with a band like Andrew McMahon in the Wilderness, and then maybe, you know, another band like Atlas Genius, and then they're the opening act for 20 minutes, and they had to pay, you know, I don't know, $400 per show to get on there, or $500 per show. And then some bands, even with an agent, no pay. So they'll do the whole tour without seeing a dime. But as Eddie could tell you too, when you're put in front of, you know, in the very beginning, when you're put in front of 700 people, if 10% of those people buy a t-shirt every night, you're in decent shape. You know, even if 1% of those people buy a t-shirt every night, you know, so, or any sort of merch. So there's all kinds of games within it, but the pay to play thing is very realistic. There's also certain people that will say you have to sell tickets. I think that's fucking horse shit, and I can't stand it, and it needs to stop. and I'm sick and tired
it's
of it.
not my
I'm
thing.
sick and tired of the people doing it, and I'm going to say this loud and clear. Stop doing it. Stop hiring shitty fucking bands to sell tickets, because I'm so sick and tired of it. I am. I've had it with it.
Yeah.
You know, be able to draw your people. Don't ask a band to sell tickets for another band in a market that they can't draw in. It's just bullshit.
I mean, the thing I remember, you know, is, this is probably 10 years ago now. I used to once in a while go to shows at Eleanor Rigby's. You guys probably remember that place. And, you know, I'd look around and I'd say, why are there 7 bands on this bill? You know, and I don't even know when the headliner is going to play that I want to see. And then I'm looking around. I'm not too good with math. But I'm like, all right, it was, I don't know, I'm going to make it up, $15 to get in. I'm looking at 20 people here. How's the pie going to get sliver cut so everyone gets their take? And I, you know, what I didn't know, being a bit naive, is, you know, a venue sometimes will post on Facebook, who wants to open for so-and-so? We're looking for a jam band or alt rock band, whatever. Hit us up. Send us your music. It's like, okay, great. Ed, your University Drive, you guys are great. We want you for this gig, opening for, I don't even know, the guy from Taking Back Sunday. I just say to him because he came around with shows like this. And then it's like, okay, now here's a stack of tickets, and you need to sell these tickets. And so it's not that you need to get bodies in the room. You just need to get those tickets sold, whether your mom buys them or I buy them. You know, it reminds, like, you know, I'm not in the business, so it's easy for me to sit here and say this and that. But that's what this is. This is kind of bullshit thing, just throwing ideas around.
Yeah.
But it made me think of, like, when I was a kid and you'd have to sell candy bars or whatever for the marching band or something. And this person won the contest. They got the 10-speed because that doesn't mean they sold the most candy bars or the most candy bars were purchased. Maybe he took them to work and sold them to dad. Or maybe the grandmother just said, how much is it going to take to win that bike? $400 here. Let me buy all the candy bars. And then the kid wins the prize. So it's just interesting when you pull back the veil a little. And I'm just makes me feel old, but I'm picturing MySpace, you know. And you would see these local bands saying, we've opened for, you know, this band, that band. We've played at the Scranton Cultural Center. We've played here and we played there. And sometimes if you didn't, you'd be like, that's great. And it is great. No matter how you got on that stage, it's great. But whether, you know, I would see, okay, well, the reason they got on that show is because they had to sell X amount of tickets to play at Tinks, because I know, because I have a friend in that band. And the reason they played that show is because I put them on that stage because it was at Montage, you know, before the Dave Matthews or Kiss show or whatever, you know, when I was working at the Weekender. So it's just like, I mean, I don't know how to, from a fan standpoint, I don't know what you're going to do. Are you going to put an asterisk on your tour, on your shirt that says we paid to be on this show and this one our cousin got us? I mean, it's such a tough business that I think you got to get in any way you can. And if you could afford to get your way on that, you know, I mean, even I think Ozfest, what there's some of those you had to pay. I think unless you're in that upper echelon. And then I remember hearing about Warped Tour for years, was either unpaid or a lot of buy-ons.
What the point that I was trying to make, though, was at the lower level, when a promoter brings in a band that they know isn't going to draw, and they're paying $5,000 to a band that isn't going to draw on the market.
Then why'd you do that?
Exactly. That's my whole thing. I'm not talking about the other stuff. Sometimes you do, like I was saying, and Eddie knows, and I've done it too. We've both been involved with bands. Well, I can't speak for you, Ed. I don't know if have you ever been involved in a situation where they, you know, gave you tickets to sell?
Oh yeah. I mean, a ton of shows.
Yeah, I mean, and like I remember one in particular. I'm not going to name any names or say anything, but it was at the Sherman Theater, and we drew a lot of people and sold way more tickets. And we were the only opener and sold a lot of tickets. Like we're talking a lot, not 100, not 200, more than that. And it was shown. And we made $0. And that's where I said, when I found that out, and Mike, you were at that show. And when I found that out, I said to the person handling it, I couldn't even believe what I was hearing.
I didn't know that. And I, just from me being there, I just remember, I don't know how many tickets he sold, but I do remember people just coming up left and right when the headliner was playing or afterwards, like, oh, you guys were great. Who are you guys? Oh, where are you from? Are you from around here? Are you on tour with them? And I was like, wow. It's just for me from an outsider, like, I understand why venues too sometimes, like, okay, they got to cover their risk too. So, hey, we want to put some locals on this gig. The catch is they're going to have to sell some tickets. I mean, I think I could see that. But, I mean, again, like when you look around the room and I think, well, there's a sound guy and there's this guy and that guy and insurance, like, how does this work? I mean, it just I made me think a little bit of this thing. Highway 81 Revisited, it's a self-plug here, but it was an anniversary show at the Backyard Ale House in Scranton. And we had Abstract Peoples, AJ's hip-hop group with Gino Lispy, and we had Gretchen Loesch come up from Philly, and the Great Party. And the sad thing is I'm naming bands that I don't think any of them exist. And maybe Heavy Blonde or somebody, I don't remember. But I remember at the end of the night, Brian Craig, God rest his soul, came over to me, and he's like, come on, let me help you count the money and divvy everything out. And, somebody hands me this stack of money, and I don't know anything about anything like this. And I'm like, oh, these guys are going to do pretty well. And he looks at me and he goes, well, this is for sound. He puts that aside. And I'm like, oh, this is for that. Okay. I'm like, oh man. I said, all right. And I'm like, I don't like where this is going. And then he said, all right, well, okay, those guys were good. AJ's band was good. Give them that. They'll be happy with that. I said, really? He goes, trust me, that's better than they're making most nights. I'm like, Jesus. I said, you know what? I'm glad I'm not a musician. That's what I learned from that. Because I'm like, tough, man. At the end of my workday, someone doesn't come over and say, well, the lights in the office cost this much. So we got to take that out and use the bathroom 3 times. So here's that for the water. And it was like, it was really eye-opening for me.
That's a big reason that I say that, like, I fought that feeling for years, of like, God, I need to make it as a musician for years. And like the financial aspect of all of it is it's so crushing. It's so crushing. And like you said, when you have promoters out there that, I have no problem with ticket sales, pre-ticket, all that shit. I just have a problem with what AJ said. If you're not giving these bands any money for their time, that's a fucking problem. I don't care if you're not giving them, if it's $5 or if it's $500, they deserve to be paid, something.
You can't really think of any other industry where
yeah.
Like, hey, you're a cook. You're welcome to make a bunch of food. Yeah. And people are going to pay for the food, and then you're not going to get any money.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Exactly. But
well, that was always my whole thing, is these people that made you sell the tickets and you got nothing.
Yeah, fuck that.
Yeah, if I buy in, at least let me. But if that's the cost of doing business, then I should walk away with a little bit of money at least.
Right, right.
I mean, on the grand scale of things, like, okay, the one time I did it, we opened for the Wu-Tang Clan, and we sold all the tickets, and it was all good, and it was that opportunity to open for them, and we sold merch and stuff like that. Okay, but I'm talking about, my big thing is people that do it with these lower level bands where the agents are charging a shit ton amount of money for a band, and you're like, I get these emails and and from these agents, and it's coming across, and they're like, oh, do you want to basically, do you want to send an offer? Yeah, sure, I'll gladly book them, they're great, door deal. And the agent, oh no, we can't do that. Well, how many people can they draw? Have they ever played this market? Well, no. Well, then what do you think? So now you're going to ask me to do what?
Yeah.
And then people get put in this position, and they want to think, and then they go and they fuck their own community by having these people. And some of the bands are definitely not deserving too. It's just because they could draw or whatever. And then they do the work for them.
Yep.
That's what I'm talking about. Stop doing.
Yeah, no, I agree.
That's
wholeheartedly.
I some people might get pissed because this was 5 minutes ago and I was yelling into the camera, but I just,
well, it's like you're asking someone else to subsidize your project.
Yeah.
It's like if I said I want to own a Maserati. AJ, you want to go for a ride in the Maserati? All right, you go to 3 guys, go to your work, go to the funeral parlor, and tell everyone we're selling, chances or raffle. It just, I don't know. It's a crazy business. I mean, I think that's the headline. It's just on every angle, and no one wants to walk away with nothing.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the way it always works. The other day I was, looking at the Live Nation office. You could see the Live Nation office from my roof, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, I could walk over there now, and I want to give them a list of like all the shows that I'm supposed to be getting refunds for. And it's, that'll take up to 90 days, but when I bought the ticket, I didn't tell them it's going to take 90 days for me to pay them. So it's like,
right.
The person that gets screwed is never going to be the one at the top. You don't have to,
never.
Yeah, the business sucks. Yeah, people at Live Nation got laid off, but you have to take a risk. The venue has to take a risk, the promoter, but the smallest risk is probably going to be to the person that holds the purse strings. And that's just the way it is, And the other thing I would usually say is, well, if you don't like it, start your own venue. And then here we have AJ, So, that's kind of what it is,
I mean, easier said than done, especially right now.
Right.
I mean, God knows, but I think the one takeaway for me for this conversation, and I always put Eddie in this light, is things, just what he said before, things have to be just pure. They just have to be organic like that. Because when you start doing things for the wrong reason, that's when the darkness of it really starts showing through. And that's also when the word pretentious comes heavy and hard as well. And, just there's a lot of different things, from both sides of things that we're talking about here, the musician side and the industry side and all of that. And we all know how dark or somewhat dark this industry is.
Sure.
We've all heard story after story after story about people.
I think anytime you have money involved with anything, there's going to have the potential for it to become twisted or corrupted, whether it's, a lot of churches probably started off with good intentions.
Yeah.
And once the money starts rolling in and the gold statues and this and that, that's a whole other conversation. There's a lot of politicians that probably had a point in their lives where I want to do what's right for the people, but I can't get there unless I accept this donation from this oil company. And then, we could go on for years, but if you try to stay 100% pure, you might end up never getting anywhere. Sometimes you got to.
Well, I think that's the problem. I think the problem is like, you do the right thing and you just do it, and people take advantage of people's love for something.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. The whole business is based on that, right? The whole business is based on selling overpriced tickets with service charges because this person loves this music and it means a lot to them.
Well, how about this really quick? You just said something that I'm glad you said it. I learned this for the first time. I got to see through the sheet. Do you know the promoter could set those service charges and make money off the back end of that? Do you know that?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't fucking know that either.
Yeah.
So sit on that. Sit on that and think of that shit. That you can set the fucking service charges for Ticketmaster and make money off of it. So when people go, why are these service charges so high? Because the fucking promoter's greedy. That's why. So
what a business, man.
We love music. We love music.
If we don't like it, we wouldn't do it, or
we wouldn't pay for it.
I wouldn't buy the tickets, But before we wrap up, we're talking a lot of negativity here, which I think it's good. I think positivity could come through talking about shining a light on some things that are a little iffy. But I wanted to give a little plug to one of our previous guests, because this just arrived in the mail.
Awesome.
You guys could see Lewis and Clark
Yeah.
triumvirate, which I think came out, of course, it's in Roman numerals. I think it came out 6 years ago. I just wanted to mention because Lou's a friend of ours that was on one of these episodes. And just a little inside thing, when he put up a thing on Instagram, social media, that there was a Bandcamp thing, I think last week, where you could like waive your fees or whatever, and it would go to the NAACP. But in this case, I believe all the profits went to the NAACP from what Lou was doing. And just, no middleman, just, I ordered it, and then I got an email from Lou like a couple days ago saying, hey, I just went to the post office in Delaware Water Gap and dropped these off. You should have them by whatever day. And it turns out today, it's the 12th of August that we're taping this. It's National Vinyl Record Day. So a little bit of positivity. I know that everything,
for sure.
Nothing on these two records here was done for any reason but the love of expressing music. It's like, I'm just a big advocate of that and of I don't know. It was just a nice thing to go downstairs and have that and the handwritten thing. Awesome. It's just cool. Like, and so for every nonsense bullshit thing there is out there, there is other good stuff. And when you do find it, it's really rewarding, And when you do, you go to a show that's maybe a little off the beaten path, and maybe, it's in an art gallery or some weird situation. You're going to remember that more than sometimes going to even Madison Square Garden or something. So there's a lot of good out there.
Yeah, most of those shows are the ones I remember the most, actually. I actually remember seeing Lewis and Clark at Test Pattern years ago, and it being in like a more, I don't even know, I guess just intimate show. Those are the ones I remember. I can't remember a lot of the punk rock, crazy insanity. I just see like a whirlwind of like colored hair, but like those shows I remember.
I remember the first time seeing you, Ed, man. Ed played solo acoustic at Carl Hall. I had seen him in other bands, but I didn't know who he was. And then he got booked on a bill with one of the other people that booked shows. And I went right up to him and like, it's just stuff like that. Just, remembering that stuff. That's one of the reasons why I started the place, because I love that. And I don't ever try to lose sight of it. I know I could get a little dark with this business and sound like I have a chip on my shoulder, but I fucking love it. I do love it. That's
probably why you do have a chip on your shoulder, though, because it's something that you love. You're not going to sit here and complain about like the rules of, highlight in Afghanistan or something, because you don't care. You know what I mean? Like, that's why I complain about stuff like in the media, because that's the business I work in and I want it to be great, or, I don't know. And, that's the way I look at it too. But anyway, guys, we should, gonna wrap this up. Thanks again, Ed, for being.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Thank you, Ed.
Just
absolutely.
One thing I think we don't do enough on here is like plug our own stuff. So like, everyone check out University Drive. Check out Ed's band. The album he mentioned, Clear. I was checking up on that today, listening to it. I really love that one, and it's a true album.
Thanks, man.
It's not just a collection of songs. It's got
Thank you,
voice interludes, and it's just a real story. And it reminds me of like, just good. It's just really, really good. And you don't get a lot of that maybe in the more modern rock end of things. And
thank you, man.
Also, you're welcome. And also, keep track of what AJ's up to at Carl Hall. I mean, check out them on social media too. It's a rough time for venues. And there's, I'm sure going to be some great shows there, hopefully sooner than later.
Probably not sooner. So maybe outside though. We're going to
I mean, that's something interesting. And outside,
to do that.
That's the wave of the present, I guess. And then, if you guys, whoever's watching this, enjoy what we're talking about and the type of musicians we featured, just check out highway81revisited.com. We have local stuff from Northeast PA, stuff from New York, stuff from everywhere, reviews, not concert reviews right now, sadly, but album reviews, and, check us out on social media as well. And, thank you guys. This was a great talk. I went in a million different directions at once, and that's what I like personally.
Same.
Yeah, Ed, thank you very much, and good luck with everything. And I really, really do hope you get to do that again, man.
Thank you, man.
It's a beautiful thing, It's a wonderful
I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Absolutely, man.
All right.
See you
Thanks, guys.
Take it easy, guys.
All right.
Doing